Welcome back. In the last class, we discussed about the first two important points of or important concepts of object-oriented programming, object and class. So today we will be discussing the remaining five concepts of object-oriented programming: data abstraction, data encapsulation, modularity, inheritance, and polymorphism. So first we are moving on to the third concept of object-oriented programming, data abstraction. So what do you mean by data abstraction? In simple words, we can say that data abstraction means it shows only the essential details and hides the background details from the user. Data abstraction shows only the essential details, what is needed for the user, and it hides the background details from the user. Okay, so in the real life, the working of ATM can be considered as an example of data abstraction in the real world. All of us go to ATM for withdrawing the money, for depositing the money, etc. So the user has only the interface has only the access to its external interface. It does not does not have the access, or we does not need the knowledge of its implementation or its internal features. We only want to withdraw the money or to deposit the money. We are not bothered about its working or its internal features, etc. So the working of ATM can be considered as a data abstraction because it shows the object ATM shows only the essential details that is needed for the user, and the implementation details or the internal features is hidden for the user because it is of no need to the user. That's why ATM is considered as an example of data abstraction in real world. Okay, in the case of C++, the concept class can be considered as an example of data abstraction. Now we can see we know that in the case of class, the details are hidden from the external world, and the essential details that is needed for the user is only given to the user when he or she requests the details. So in the case of data abstraction, it separates the interface and implementation. Interface means the external interface with which the user works, that is known as the interface or the communication part, and the implementation part means the background details. So in the case of class, we know that the variables declared, the functions coded, etc. are hidden from the user, and the user gets access to its functions only by requesting through the object. Okay, in the last class we discussed how to access the functions. We can access the function by using the object name, dot operator, and function code. So that is the interface, that is the way of interacting with the class. So when the user requests for a function, it gives the details to the outside world. So that is why class can be considered as an example of data abstraction. Clear? It gives only the essential details and hides the implementation part from the user. Okay. So next we are moving on to the fourth concept of object-oriented programming, data encapsulation. So in simple words, data encapsulation can be termed as it is a process of binding or combining the data and functions together so that they are safe from the outside world. Data encapsulation is the process of, or data encapsulation is a concept of binding both data and functions. We have studied this word so many times, or we have heard these words so many times: binding both data and functions together. We have heard this sentence in the definition of object. Object is the process of binding data and functions together. I have already explained the data cannot be accessed to the outside world without the permission of the object. So that is data encapsulation. So the data is safe with the concept of data encapsulation because the data is hidden from the outside world. So in the case of C++, object is an example of data encapsulation. We have already said object means binding of data and functions. In the similar way, class can also be considered as an example of data encapsulation because in the last class I have discussed with you the access specifiers, private, public, protected, etc. And I have already said that private can be considered as an example of local scope, public can be considered as an example of global scope, and the protected I have not explained. I already said I will explain it in the portion of inheritance. So private access specifier and protected access specifier helps us to hide the data from the outside world, or in other words we can say, if the data is given inside the access specifiers of um, private and protected, it cannot be accessed from the outside world. Only the functions or data that has permission to access the details given inside the private and protected can only access that data. In this way, the data is safe from the outside world. So, see, in class, the access specifiers, private and protected, does not allow the data to be visible to the outside world. So, data is very much valued in the case of data encapsulation or in the case of OOPS concept. Clear? Okay. So next we are going on to the fifth concept, modularity. This is very familiar to you. We have studied it in the first year. The process of dividing a big program into small parts is known as modules, and later these modules are combined together to form a complete software. We have already studied this definition. So once again I am reading this definition. Modularity is the concept in which a program is partitioned into modules and later combined together to form a complete software. So the process of dividing a large program into small parts is known as modules, and these modules are combined together to form a complete software. So in C++, modularity is implemented through defining functions. We already know that through function modules can be implemented through functions. So consider this example. I am going to implement a school software, and while I am going to implement the school software, I can divide. Instead of writing the software as a single program and I am dividing this software into two modules. First one is the student module and second one is the teacher module, and later these two modules are combined together to form the school software. So this is a very simple example of the modularity concept. Okay. So next we are going to discuss about the sixth concept of object-oriented programming, inheritance. This is a very important concept of OOPS. Through inheritance, an object can access the features of another class in addition to its own features. Once again I repeat, through inheritance, an object of a class can access the properties and functions of another class. This is important word, of another class, in addition to its own features. Okay. So, inheritance supports hierarchical classification and reusability. So, what do you mean by hierarchical classification? So, this is an example of hierarchical classification. Inheritance can also be explained through this diagram. So, look here. I have first drawn a class. I represented sports, and under sports I have represented hockey, football and cricket. In the language of C++, we can say hockey is inherited from sports, football is inherited from sports. In the similar way, cricket is inherited from sports. That means, in addition to the features of hockey, that means hockey contains its own rules and regulations, or it contains its own features. In addition to its own features, it can access the features of sports also in general. In the similar way, football contains its own features. In addition to its own features, it can access the features of sports. Okay, so in the similar way, cricket, in addition to the features of cricket, its own features, it can access the features of sports. That means the hockey, football and cricket can contain the features of or will contain the features of sports in common. In addition, hockey contains its own features, football contains its own features, and cricket contains its own features. So this is inheritance. In the similar way, I have inherited junior football team and senior football team from football. So, what do you mean by that? Junior, in addition to the features of junior football team, it can access the general feature of football. In the similar way, in addition to the features of senior football team, it can access the features of football. That means the junior football team and senior football team will contain in common the features of football. In addition to this, the junior football team contain its own features and the senior football team contain its own features. So this is a very simple example of inheritance. So what I have defined in the previous slide, I have explained with the diagram in this hierarchical classification. So hierarchical classification can be attained through inheritance, because we are inheriting sports. Hockey, football and cricket is inherited from sports, and the similar way junior football team and senior football team is inherited uh, uh, from the football. So that is the hierarchical diagram of inheritance. Okay, so next we have already said inheritance supports reusability. So next we are going to look how inheritance supports reusability. We have already said that we are going in inheritance, we are going to derive a new class, or we are going to derive a new class from the existing one without modifying the existing one. So that is a concept of inheritance. We can add additional features to an existing class without modifying it. In the case of sports, we are going to add additional features and we are not modifying the sports. Okay, so that class is known as the base class. That means in the previous example, sports is known as the base class, whereas the hockey, football and cricket is known as the derived class, because we have derived from the base class. Football, cricket and hockey is derived from the base class sports. Okay, so here look, I have derived two classes. These two classes are known as derived class, and base class contains two features A and B. So since the derived class, in the derived class we can contain the features of A and B in common. In addition to this, it can contain C and D, as well as in the second object it can contain C. So the base class is reused in this object as well as in the second object, or the second derived class. Base class is reused in the first derived class and the second derived class. Without here, what is the specialty of this base class? We have not rewritten the base class. The details of base class we have added added the details to the base class in the derived class. So that is the importance of inheritance. Okay, so this is reusability. We have reused the base class without modifying the base class. That is reusability. Clear? Okay, so next we are going to look what are the different types of inheritance. This is a very simple portion. We are going to look what are the different types of inheritance. So the first inheritance is single inheritance. Single means one. So in this type of inheritance, only one class is derived from, one derived class is derived from one base class. Okay, that type of model is known as single inheritance. So here class B is the derived class and class A is the base class. So class B can contain the features of class A as well as its own features. Okay, class B is derived from class A. Clear? So second, we are moving on to the second type of inheritance, hierarchical inheritance. I have already explained about the hierarchical classification in the previous slide. So hierarchical inheritance means more than one derived class is derived from a single base class. More than one derived class can be derived from a single base class. So in this example, class B and class C are the derived classes. So class B and class C is derived from the base class A. That means class B can contain its own features. In addition to this, it can contain the features of class A. In the similar way, class C contain its own features. In addition to this, it can contain the features of class A. So this model is known as hierarchical inheritance. The third inheritance is multiple inheritance. What is the specialty of this? Only one derived class and more than one base class. That means from more than one base classes, only one class can be derived. Okay, so here A and B are base classes and C is the derived class. That means C can contain both the features of A as well as of B. Clear? C can contain, the class C is the derived class. That means in the case of multiple inheritance, C can contain both the features of class A and class B. In addition, it contains its own features. So C can contain class A features, class B features. In addition to this, it will contain its own features. Okay. So next inheritance is multi-level inheritance. So this inheritance you have to make it clear. In this inheritance, it is in one single level. That means here class C is the derived class of class B. In the similar way, class B is the derived class of class A. Okay, so this means class C can derive the features of class B in addition to its own features. In the similar way, class B can contain the features of class A in addition to its own features. So class A is the base class of class B. In the similar way, class B is the base class of class C. Once again I repeat, class C is derived from class B. That means class C can contain the features of class B in addition to its own features. In the similar way, class B is the derived class of class A. That means class B can contain the features of class A in addition to its own features. So in terms of base class, we can say that class A is the base class of class B and class B is the base class of class A. Clear? So this is the model of multi-level inheritance. So the next inheritance is, and the last inheritance is hierarchical inheritance. Hybrid inheritance. So the speciality of hybrid inheritance is that it combines the features of both hierarchical and multiple inheritance. We know that in the case of hierarchical inheritance, there will be only one base class and more than one derived classes. Whereas in the case of multiple inheritance, we know that it can contain more than one base classes but only one derived class. So these two features are combined together in the case of hybrid inheritance. So see this example. Here class A is the base class of class B and class C. So this model can be considered as a model of hierarchical inheritance. More than one classes can be derived from a single base class. This is hierarchical inheritance. Now consider the second part. Only one class is derived from more than one base classes. So this is an example of multiple inheritance. Clear? So in the case of hybrid inheritance, it combines both the features of hierarchical inheritance as well as the features of multiple inheritance. Okay. So next we are going to look what is the syntax for declaring a derived class. So first you have to use the keyword class followed by the derived class name. That means a new class name. This is a user defined name followed by the punctuator colon. Next, we have to specify the access specifier. This is also the keyword in inheritance. We have three access specifiers: private, public, and protected. You need not study in detail about the access specifier. Just be familiar with the names: private, public, and protected. So next we have to give the base class name, that means the existing class name. Okay, and within the opening bracket and the closing bracket we have to give the data members and member functions related to the new class, that means related to the derived class. Now consider one example. Here I have drawn the model of a single inheritance, that means one derived class from one base class. So I am going to define the new class B from class A. Okay, so I'm going to write, first I'm going to write the keyword class. Next I have to give the derived class name or the new class name. The new class name is B, so I have written here as B followed by the punctuator colon. Now from where I am going to derive? From class A, that means A is the base class, so I am going to derive it as public. So I am using the access specifier public. Access specifier here I am giving as public followed by the base class name. Here the base class name is A, so I have written as A, and the data members and the member functions related to class B will be written inside the opening bracket and the closing bracket of class B. Okay, so with this we have completed the portions of inheritance. Next we are moving on to the last concept of object-oriented programming, polymorphism. So what do you mean by polymorphism? The word poly means many and the morph means shape. Poly means many and morph means shape. So in simple words, polymorphism can be defined as an ability of an object to express in different forms. Okay, polymorphism is an ability of the object to express in different forms depending upon the different situations. We will look at the example so it will be clear to you. Now this is the general idea about the polymorphism. Now we are going on to the definition of the polymorphism. In OOPS, polymorphism is the ability of the programming languages to process objects differently depending on their data type or class. So how this object is acting differently, that is said here. Object act differently depending upon the data type or class. Which data type is passed to the object determines what type of functions it should perform. Clear? Depending upon the data passed to the object, it determines what type of function it should perform. Okay, that is known as polymorphism. Okay, so an object acts differently depending upon the data sent to it. Same object is acting differently on different situations. That means depending on the data passed to it, the same object is acting differently on different functions or different situations. That is polymorphism. So we can look at the examples of polymorphism so it will be more clear to you. Now I am going to the different types of polymorphism. There are two types of polymorphism: compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. You have to make it clear the first word, compile time. That means polymorphism take place during compilation. And runtime polymorphism, that means polymorphism take place during runtime. So this is the difference, different types of polymorphism: compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. So polymorphism is divided into two: runtime polymorphism and compile time polymorphism. And we are going to study the two examples of compile time polymorphism. Runtime polymorphisms examples you need not study in this year. In higher classes you can study what the different examples of runtime polymorphism. So in our syllabus we have to study only the examples of compile time polymorphism. There are two examples of compile time polymorphism. That means that the first example is the function overloading and the operator overloading. Okay, so we are going to detail about the compile time polymorphism. So the first point you have to note here is the compile time polymorphism is also known as early binding or static polymorphism. You are familiar with the word static, means before compilation. That is the meaning of static. We have studied static memory allocation. That means before execution memory is allocated, that is static. So here also before the execution polymorphism occurs. Since it occurs before, it is also known as early binding. So what do you mean by compile time polymorphism? The definition of the compile time polymorphism, it is the ability of the compiler to bind a function call with the function definition during compilation itself. So the compiler joins the function call with the function definition. It binds the function call with the function definition during compilation. So we have already said that during the compilation process or before the execution of the program, the function call is joined with the function definition. So that is why it is known as compile time polymorphism. Now the two examples of compile time polymorphism is first one, function overloading. What do you mean by function overloading? This I will explain with an example. Consider these functions. First, the two I have given the function area. Okay, and in the first case I have given as area of int. That means it contains only one data. The function name is area, but it contains only one data, and the data is of type integer. So this area of int can be used to find the area of a square, because it contains only one data, or one that here one since only one data is passed to this function area, it can be used to find the area of a square, because a square require only side. To find the area of a square we need only side. So this area of int can be used to find the area of a square. Now consider another function. Here also I have used the word area, but here I have given two datas of type integer. So since I have given two datas, this function can be used to find the area of a rectangle, because a rectangle contains two requires two datas, the length as well as the breadth. Okay, so here look, the name of the function is same, but this function act differently depending upon the data sent to it. If I'm going to give only one data, it will find the area of the square. And if I'm going to give two data, this area function will find the area of the rectangle. So the same function name but act differently depending on the data sent to it. So this is function overloading, or this is polymorphism. Act differently depending upon the data sent to it. The same function area is acting differently depending upon the data sent to it. If I am going to send only one data, it will find the area of the square. If I am going to send two data, it will find the area of the rectangle. So this is a very simple example of function overloading. Function is acting differently depending upon the data sent to it. Okay, so this can be considered as an example of polymorphism. Hope you are clear with this example. So next we are moving to look what do you mean by operator overloading. So in the similar way, we can give new meaning to the existing operator. Okay, that means the operator can act differently on different situations. That you mean by operator overloading, giving a new meaning to the operator. For example, consider the example of plus. Okay, we know that the plus operator is used to add two numbers. Through this polymorphism concept, we can give new features to the plus operator. That means we can make the plus operator to add two strings, two dates, etc. So depending upon the data sent to the plus operator, The plus operator act differently. If I am going to give two numbers, it will add two numbers. If I am going to give two strings, it will add two strings. Means here adding means joining. Okay. If I am going to give two dates, it will add two dates. So the same operator plus act differently at different situations depending on the data sent to it. So this is known as operator overloading, and this is also an example of polymorphism. Means I have given a new meaning to the existing operator, or the existing operator act differently at different places or at different situations depending on the data sent to it. That is known as operator overloading. That is also known as polymorphism. So hope you are clear with the function overloading and operator overloading as well as compile time polymorphism. So this all occurs before the execution process or before the execution of the program. Okay, so next we are moving on to the second type of polymorphism, runtime polymorphism. I have already said this occurs during the execution. Since it occurs during the execution, it is also known as dynamic polymorphism or late binding. In the previous case, we said it was early binding. Static time polymorphism was early binding, whereas in runtime polymorphism, it is known as late binding. See, runtime polymorphism refers to the binding of function definition with the function called during runtime. So you need not study in detail about the runtime polymorphism. You have to be only familiar with the definition of the runtime polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism is implemented with the concept of pointers and inheritance. Okay, so we have completed our portions. Hope all of you have understood what I have discussed today. In the next class, we will be dealing with the pointers related to concept-oriented programming. Thank you.